In Shadow of the Colossus, we as a player are confronted with the inevitable. The main character, Wonder, has to die, and there's really nothing that we can do in order to stop this fate. Right after we see a slow and melancholic death cutscene of a set Colossus, the game gives us back agency over Wonder. A group of black tendrils comes out of the defeated Colossus, hunts us down, and then inevitably penetrates us in a very visceral and brutal way. And they apparently just kill Wonder. After that, we get a transition of a light in a tunnel. We wake up back in Dorman's temple, the Colossus idol falls apart, and then we get new instructions from Dorman over the next target that we need to defeat. Hence and repeat 15 times in a row. For some reason, Team Ico and Fumito Ueda decided to give us back control and agency over Wonder in this little section between all of this big cutscene. Why not just simply do a cutscene of this, right? Why do they have to give us back agency over Wonder? The interesting thing is the outcome of this interactivity is always the same. A bunch of random black tendrils come out of the Colossus. We try and struggle to escape, and you can actually run away quite extensively on some of these bosses. But we always end up failing. We always end up getting hit by these tendrils, and it seems like Wonder just straight up dies with this interaction. There is an American game designer called Nick Fortugno. He did this little essay that is very interesting about Shadow of the Colossus. And Nick Fortugno describes this as a very sort of intentionality of the designers of this game. This game always wanted to emphasize the fact that you cannot change Wonder's fate no matter how much you try. And so even though you have control of Wonder, this control ends up being a very shallow one. It's a fake sort of control. It makes you believe you have a choice. It makes you believe that you can actually escape these tendrils. But the reality is, no matter how hard you try in any of these Colossus, you can never escape them. Nick even says here a really powerful phrase that I want to quote. By constructing interactive scenes where the player is led to believe that he can succeed when the goal is in fact mechanically impossible. The game uses multiple moments of futile interaction to give the tragedy its emotional power. He describes this interactivity as futile interactivity. It's a way to give agency to the player, but at the same time, the designer knows exactly what he's doing. He's putting you in some sort of trap. It wants to give you the idea that you have control and agency and decision making over what the character will do, but you don't. Wander's journey is one of great struggle, one where triumph and glory are not really present when he reaches his destination. His conversation with Dorman in the beginning of the game is very much a reminder of that. These are the last words that we hear from Wonder himself. It doesn't matter. He is so determined and so committed to this quest that he simply does not care about the consequences of what can happen to this world and to himself. And if you notice, every time you defeat a Colossus, you are not really rewarded with like a very triumphant sort of music. You are not rewarded with like shiny new weapons or with more XP or level up, nothing. The only thing that you get is literally death. You literally get killed with every single Colossus that you kill. At the end of the game, Wonder is visibly broken. He seems to be already heavily consumed by Dorman, and after still being inflicted with an arrow to the knee, pun intended, and then stabbed in the chest, his determination is so big that he still rises one last time. He takes off the sword from his chest. Even in this state, all he cares for, all he wants to do is to be reunited with Mono. This little interaction even accentuates even more his reality. But it's at this stage that we see that he falls to the ground one last time, and Dorman essentially takes control completely over his body. This is not the final form of Dorman. It feels, at least from what he says here, that it's kind of like a sort of cocoon. It's like a mid sort of phase. He's taking control over Wonder and still regenerating from basically having all his memories or whatever it is taken away from the idols that have fallen apart. But at this stage, we are the ones who become a Colossus. And straight away, the thing that we notice is that we are actually so weak, it's insane. We think in the beginning when we're fighting and we're trying to figure out the controls for this Colossus that we are now in power, that we are now the strongest one. But you kind of realize that that's not really the reality here. The Colossus is like super slow. Your controls are like super janky and it feels like you're not even doing anything. It feels like the characters that are running away from you are a lot faster and mobile than you. And that makes you kind of realize like, oh, all of those Colossus that I just fought aren't really that strong. These small characters actually have a pretty good advantage against these Colossus. So when you are Dorman, your vision is obscured by Dorman himself. Your controls are just, I didn't even understand. I replayed recently Shadow of the Colossus and I couldn't even understand the controls. Maybe they were just completely changed in order for me to not understand them. But it's just, I just felt so useless playing as Dorman. And I think that is very much an intention. It makes you really feel like, oh, these Colossus aren't really that strong. You think you're triumphant as Wonder beating these Colossus, but then you realize at the end, no, you're really not. Like you just defeated a bunch of creatures that have been hiding in caves and very old ruins of cities that are so difficult to even access in the first place. But all of this futile interactivity that Nick describes, it has very much an objective, which is to prepare you for what is to come in the end of the game. And at the end of the game, Emon takes the sword that Wonder has, throws it into the water that is in the temple. It creates this sort of like vortex that Dorman now is being sucked into and effectively dying from what it seems like. We even hear at this stage the sort of slow and melancholic music that is played when we kill a Colossus. Team Ico basically gave you again control of Wonder, but it's at this stage that you can basically reach over to cracks and little things in order to hold on and actually try to reach Mono once again. But whether you like it or not, you will understand inevitably that you will never be able to reach Mono again. And that you will always be sucked into this vortex and there's nothing that you can do about it. And this again adds to that sort of dramatic necessity that this game wants to try and impose on you. This game has heavily reminded me of a movie that I recently saw called In the Mood for Love. And In the Mood for Love, if you haven't seen the movie, go watch it because I'm going to spoil it. This movie is essentially about a couple of sorts. And so they meet each other and they kind of fall into this like very weird platonic love romance going on where they don't really touch that much, or when they touch, it's very, light. They never kiss or anything like that, but they care very deeply for each other. They're with each other long periods of time. They talk about their day just like a couple would do, right? And they have fights like a couple would do. Since the beginning of the movie, or very early on in the movie, they talk to you about how this is just a play. We are doing a play here. This is not real, right? And you know this from the beginning of the movie. But for the period of time that you're watching this movie, you always have that idea behind your mind of, oh, is it now that they're going to kiss? Is it now that they're going to, ditch their previous life and just get married and have kids or whatever, right? There's always that thing on the back of your head of like that longing kiss of this platonic relationship. But at the end, it doesn't happen because they want to give you this very impactful and dramatic and tragic sort of ending to this hypothetical romance that was never there in the first place, so to speak. But Shadow of the Colossus really tries to do something similar here. It's trying to give you in a very different way, but it's really trying to give you this idea that you can save Mono and save Wonder from this reality. But the thing is, and going back to what Dorman says in the beginning of the game, you have to face the consequences of your actions, and they are big. You should not have done this, and you know you should have not done this. You should not be messing with the dead. That is like forbidden. If you mess with it, there's going to be consequences and you need to face them. That's exactly what happens. Now, apart from this futile interactivity that Nick describes, there's also a bunch of other things that Shadow of the Colossus does really well, which is mostly to emphasize the tragedy of his journey. One particular thing that I absolutely adore is actually the animations from Wonder and his horse. So for example, if you check when he's running, he does it in a very awkwardly manner, especially when he has his sword in his hand. It feels like he's just flailing his sword to the momentum of the wind and how he's running in a very sort of disorganized manner. For example, when he's climbing, you really do feel the weight of his jumping. Sometimes he even swings back and forth in order to gain some momentum if he wants to jump to the next ledge. Or other more simple interactions whenever you stab a Colossus, it really takes all of your energy, right? You use all of that energy in that one single strike in order to deal as much damage as you can. And when you do that, you grunt like, and then a bunch of splashing black blood comes out of the Colossus, and it just feels very visceral. And when Wonder actually gets hit, for example, by these like smaller Colossus, I believe it's the 11th Colossus, you get thrown away like a goddamn doll. Like you are nothing, you are worthless. And the fact that you just stay in the ground for long periods of time, it feels so agonizing. It feels so frustrating. The Colossus is just looking at you, ready for you to just get up for his next strike, right? And it feels like there's nothing that you can do. It feels kind of hopeless in that sense. And even the way that you heal in this game, the fact that you need to like crouch on your knees, it kind of makes you feel even more inferior than you already are. And when he swims, my God, he swims honestly in such a pathetic way. I'm gonna be real. When you try to swim with Wander in a fast-paced manner, I feel like he's actually pretty good. But when he swims in like a slow manner, or when he just simply stops, it really feels like he's just really trying to stay afloat, which kind of emphasizes that whole idea of, you know, this mission is a struggling one that I can barely keep up with whatever is going on, right? All of these like small interactions, all of these small animations, I think they really help to emphasize Wander's really, really tough and struggling journey. One that, again, there's no glory, there's no triumph, there's nothing here that Wander can be looking forward to in the end. This is my nephew here. She has invaded this video. I'm sorry. Fala aqui para o microfone. Bom dia.
Bom dia.
But yeah, Shadow of the Colossus is a game... Okay, you're leaving. But yeah, Shadow of the Colossus is a game that really tries to help us understand how to let go. It's also a big reminder that our actions do have consequences, and that we will need to face those consequences in the end. And that's why probably Shadow of the Colossus is still my favorite game of all time. And yeah, if you like this video, subscribe. Have a good one.